I think the language is taken out of context, and I really didn't intentionally mean to put down my teammates. I would apologize to my teammates, which I already have, about the article. I just have to be better with my language because I know it's not the message, it's the messenger, and understanding what I say.
She didn't whisper it, she said it loud enough for the whole league to hear. Chicago can't run it back. Not like this. Not after a season that felt like pushing a boulder uphill with a flat tire.
We attract the best of the best because we can't settle for what we have this year. And however I can help to get the best here, that's what I'm going to do this offseason.
Angel Reese put the sky on notice and drew a line you could see from the cheap seats. Either bring in great players or she's not settling for a repeat of this year. That wasn't a hint. That was a headline. And the moment those words hit print, the clock started ticking in Chicago. But here's the twist nobody expected. The boldest ultimatum of the year came with receipts the league can read too.
A meeting is planned at which players are expected to address Reese directly.
Somebody who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship and has done it before.
Turnovers piling up, emotions overflowing, a discipline line crossed so squarely the league stepped in. Angel Reese reached the tech threshold 8 in one season, and the one-game suspension that comes with it landed right before a hyped showdown with Indiana. The timing shot through the fan base like a bad buzzer. Say you want the best, then miss a marquee game because of techs? That contradiction is hard to ignore. Let's rewind to where the fuse was lit.
We have to get good players. We have to get great players. That's a non-negotiable for me. I'm not settling for the same shit we did this year. Oh boy. Reese told the Tribune.
Reese said she wasn't settling, that Chicago needs good players, great players, and that getting top talent is non-negotiable. There was no softening there, no cuddly PR. You could hear the subtext, raise the bar, raise the roster, or she'll have to consider a different direction. It was the most public shot at a locker room we've seen all year from a young star. Whether you call that leadership or a live grenade depends on your zip code. Inside the building, it didn't land quietly. Teammates saw the interview, didn't love being painted as not good enough, and a team meeting was lined up so players could address Reese directly. Meetings happen on every team. But meetings about you? That's not a stat you want. It signals tension. It signals we need to get on the same page because right now we're not. One line really cut. The part about not being able to rely on Courtney Vandersloot to come back at the age she's at. In a vacuum, you can frame that as roster planning. In reality, it was said about a franchise icon who tore her ACL and missed the season, someone who built her name in Chicago and earned her stripes the hard way. In a culture that still runs on respect, that landed like a cold slap, and here's where the irony gets loud. The front office already pushed chips in. They sacrificed a premium draft pick to bring in a proven two-way guard with championship pedigree. You can argue with the strategy, but you can't argue that Chicago sat on their hands. They paid a premium for a veteran to stabilize the group now. When a team trades a top pick for you, it's a clear sign they're building with you. So the picture looked like this. Chicago moved the future to help the present. Reese said the present still isn't good enough, and the room bristled. That's how you turn a personnel debate into a culture story. And culture stories travel fast. On the floor, the highs and lows were just as loud. The highs, double-double production that kept her on leaderboards and on TVs across the country. The lows, careless giveaways that fed opponent runs, and the kind of texts that make coaches age in dog years. By late in the year, the league counted 8 technicals on Reese, automatic suspension territory, so she sat one. Fans had circled Chicago versus Indiana, the rivalry, the ratings, the noise. Instead, they got an empty chair where the drama was supposed to sit. Chicago then added its own penalty, a team-imposed first-half benching over detrimental comments. That tells you this wasn't just media chatter, it was bleeding into day-to-day operations. Even after the league served its punishment for the 8th tech, the Sky laid down their line about the comments. That's organizational accountability, and it was unmistakably public. Let's be real, stars vent. Legends have aired out front offices before, but there's an unwritten order. Dominate first, then dictate terms. When you put your team on notice and you're near the top of the league in turnovers, people are going to say it. You can't preach control while giving possessions away. You can't demand composure from others while you're stacking techs. That's not a hater take. That's a scoreboard take. And the league and the schedule keep receipts. Now pause, because this part matters. After the interview exploded, Reese faced the cameras and did something important. She owned the tone. She said the language was taken out of context, that she didn't intend to put down her teammates, and she apologized to them directly. Not a vague post, not a deflection, not a vague post, not a deflection. An acknowledgement that her frustration turned into a message she didn't want. She admitted she needs to be better with how she says things. That's growth. That's walking back a match you've already lit and trying to make sure it doesn't burn the whole house. If you've been in a locker room, you get the language. Taken out of context is athlete speak for "my message wasn't shaped right," and "I didn't intend to put down my teammates" is a bridge building line. It's not about spinning the past, it's about giving the room a future. Chicago needs that future badly. No more mixed messages, no more headlines that read like warnings. An apology doesn't erase everything, but it reopens the door. That's step one. Here's why the friction felt so combustible around the league. Everybody could see Chicago's bets. Veteran guard added. Floor general lost to injury. You upgrade the backcourt, lose your engine in June, and your margin for error evaporates. That's not just a get-me-better teammates problem. That's the roster we built never got to exist, which is also why veterans heard Reese's words as a little too absolute. Context matters. When a plan breaks because of health, there's a difference between reassessing and dismissal. Meanwhile, the one-game suspension for the 8th technical was non-negotiable. Rules are rules, and it landed right before the opponent fans wanted most. Indiana, the rivalry, the primetime chatter. But to make it even messier, Indiana's own star later went down for the season, so the marquee lost more shine. A rivalry without its faces is like a movie without the names on the poster. Everyone felt the air go out. And speaking of that rival, let's talk about an opposite approach. From day one, Caitlin Clark has worked with this clear, steady broadcast voice. Never overheat the mic. Keep it team first. Praise the opponent when it's deserved. She even said positive things about Reese's platform and game earlier in the year. You can say compliments are PR, but the pattern is the point. The tone is consistent under a spotlight most pros never see. That's not an accident. That's a choice. Leadership is contagious. When your star's public tone is lift, your locker room tends to tighten. When your star's public tone is warning flare, your locker room tends to brace. That's the fork where Chicago and Indiana diverged this season. The Fever's culture felt steadier even through injuries, while the Sky's culture felt louder on mics, in headlines, and eventually in a half-game benching by their own team. One path builds belief. The other builds bandwidth for drama. Now zoom back to the basketball. Reese's rebounding is elite. Nobody can argue that. She lives on the glass. She flips possessions. She drags extra chances out of thin air. And coaches can scheme around just about anything except effort on the boards. That part of her game is why the Sky pushed their chips in. It's why she hovers around the top of rebounding leaderboards every time you refresh. But you don't get to carry only the strengths. The turnovers and the composure questions are part of the portfolio too. Growth for stars is learning to be the calm in the fourth quarter and the quiet in the press room. What happens next? That comes down to two rooms, the GM's office and the locker room. In the GM's office, Chicago has to decide whether this win now arc continues, more vets, more picks out the door, or whether they pivot back to the draft and player development. You can only pay for shortcuts so long before the invoice shows up. In the locker room, Reese and company have to translate an apology into alignment. That looks like film sessions with fewer side eyes, walkthroughs without whisper campaigns, and a training camp where every line is "we." If that happens, this whole saga becomes a scar, not an open wound. There's a version of this story where Angel Reese becomes the exact leader she says she wants to be. She keeps the edge because the edge is part of her game, but she polishes the delivery. She saves the bluntest talk for inside the walls and reserves the outside voice for standards, not slaps. She attacks the turnover problem like it's a playoff series. She picks her spots with officials. She guards those 8th and 9th techs like they're game winners. Players evolve, we've seen it 1,000 times, but it never happens by accident. There's also a version where Chicago decides the cleanest reset is a separation. Front offices don't love living at the cliff of a quote. If they think the splash of controversy is soaking the brand more than lifting the ceiling, they'll explore the market. That's not a threat. That's how this business works. And around the league, there are always execs with ideas about who fits where if Chicago changes course. The calculus is simple. Does the production plus potential outweigh the noise plus cost? Organizations answer that question every offseason. But here's the realest thing you'll hear in this video. None of this is settled. because one long offseason can flip a narrative faster than a 7-0 run. If Reese walks back into camp, locks in the handle, kills the live ball turnovers, and channels the fire into fourth quarter stops and endgame boxouts, the story changes. If the front office nails free agency around her, the story changes again. And if the apology becomes a pattern, measured words, targeted messages, praise first, critique in private, the story changes for good. That's how stars become centers of gravity instead of centers of storms. So what are we left with? A season where a young star raised her voice, a team that pushed back, a league that applied the rulebook to her tech count and sat her down, a front office that already paid for a high-profile guard and lost its veteran point to an ACL, and a rival whose face of the franchise missed the stretch run, but still set the template for how to steer the microphone when it's red hot. If Chicago wants a blueprint for calm power, they don't need to copy anyone's plays. They just need to copy the temperature. To the Reese fans, you're not wrong about her talent. The rebounding is real. The motor is real. The star power is very real. But leadership is a second skill set, and it has to be trained like a left hand or a closeout angle. This season put that on tape. To the skeptics, you're not wrong either. The turnovers happened, the technicals happened, the words went public and hit nerves. That's on film too. True things can coexist. Growth lives in the space between them. If we're calling this what it is, we'll call it a fork in the road. The apology bought room. The off-season buys time. Chicago's next moves will buy clarity. Either they double down, build a better cast around Angel Reese, and see whether a calmer version of her becomes the engine of a playoff team. Or they pivot, cash out, and split the narrative in two. One where she breaks through somewhere else, and one where Chicago rebuilds from a quieter place. Both futures are real. Only one will show up on opening night. So let's end where we began, with the line that started the fire. We have to get great players. That's non-negotiable. If Chicago brings them in, if Reese meets them with poise, if the message shifts from threat to standard, the sky can turn this year's headache into next year's headline. If not, the league keeps moving. New stars step forward, windows close, and ultimatums age fast when the wins don't follow. That's the sport. That's the scoreboard. That's the part nobody gets to negotiate. Your turn. Are you Team Clark? Steady tone, contagious professionalism, or Team Reese, raw edge, massive ceiling, and a season's worth of lessons to process? Drop it in the comments, baby goat or baby giraffe, and then tell us your offseason fix for Chicago. Point guard priority, another two-way wing, or a fresh start for everyone? Hit like, smash subscribe, and turn on the bell, because the moment Chicago makes its first move, we're breaking it down here. But that wasn't the whole story. What happens after the apology is what defines leaders. Anyone can say my words came out wrong. Few can turn that sentence into a season-long standard. Inside a locker room, that means setting the temperature before anyone else does. First in the weight room, last off the floor. No side-eye in film. No coded messages in pressers. Veterans feel that. Rookies copy it. Suddenly the room shifts from bracing for quotes to preparing for games. That's how apologies become architecture. Let's talk basketball, not just headlines. Live ball turnovers are the most expensive kind of mistake. They don't just hand the opponent the ball, they hand them numbers the other way. 2-on-1, 3-on-2. Those are automatic momentum swings. For a high-usage forward, the fix isn't magic, it's sequencing. One hard dribble instead of three. Wider base before contact. Early outlet when the double shows. Hit the safety valve at the nail instead of pivoting blind into length. You change 3 of those per game and a careless label turns into calm. Coaches notice. Teammates relax. Then there's the whistle game. You don't have to charm officials. You just have to make their jobs easy. Get set early. Show your hands. Talk early. Not after the bump. Walk away at 5 syllables, not 15. The league doesn't reward silence. It rewards control. And in fourth quarters, control is a skill you can measure. That's where stars live. Not just in the points, but in the temperature of the final 4 minutes. Chicago's front office will have to make a choice that honors both the present and the past. Respect the banners. Respect the vets. That's a tradition in this league. You don't dismiss the people who paved your lane. You build on them. Which is why the next roster decision can't be a scattershot. One name here, one name there, while hoping chemistry magically appears. The blueprint is clear. A reliable table-setting guard. A spacer who punishes help at the corners, and a big who screens with force. That's how you sharpen the edges of a glass-cleaning star and turn second shots into easy shots. There are 3 paths in front of Chicago. Path 1, run it back plus. Keep Reese, add a steady point guard who values the ball like a family heirloom, and sign a wing who hits open threes without needing 10 dribbles. Path 2, controlled reset. Hold the line on cap space, collect picks, and let your development staff cook while you rebuild trust and identity. Path 3, the big swing. Move a core piece for a top-tier creator, and dare the conference to keep up. None of those paths work without alignment. Front office, bench, locker room, walking the same direction and speaking with one voice. If the organization decides Reese is the centerpiece, the game plan writes itself. Embrace what she is, an elite rebounder with a relentless engine, and simplify the reads around her. Empty side actions that remove the help. Early seals so she's catching 2 feet from the cup, not 8. If the double comes, pre-wire the corner skip so it's not a search, it's muscle memory. On defense, trust her as the first rebound and the first outlet. Make rebound outlet run a creed, not a clip. You trim the decision tree, and the turnovers trim themselves. If they decide the cleanest story is a split, the fit matters. You don't drop a high-motor rebounder into a slow mid-range offense and hope for fireworks. You pair her with a point guard who lives in the paint and sees the kick out before it appears. You surround with shooting and a vertical spacer who drags weak side help out of the lane. You run. You hunt early seals. You weaponize the glass. That's how you turn a polarizing season into a platform for a leap. There's also the human arc. Plenty of stars have had a year that felt too loud, quotes that aged badly, technicals they wish they had back, a reputation that needed sanding. The comeback doesn't happen with one speech. It happens with 100 small choices no one tweets about. The extra sprint in practice when the camera's off. The dap to a rookie who just bricked 2 shots in a row. The interview where you praise a role player by name for a screen that freed a teammate. Those moments say, I'm building this with you, not for you. That is culture. That is tradition. And believe it or not, that still wins in this league. The Vandersloot piece matters here, not as a headline, but as a lesson. Longevity demands respect. When a player who helped build your city's basketball identity goes down, you honor her absence like you'd honor a banner. That's not sentimentality, that's standards. It teaches younger teammates that they're joining a lineage, not just a roster. And it tells future free agents exactly what kind of room they're walking into. One where history is not a prop, it's a guide. Let's zoom back to the apology one more time, because this is the hinge on which next year swings. And I'm sorry on camera is step 1. Step 2 is what you don't say next time. No heat of the moment lines that sound like exit interviews. No public scorecards about who's good enough. Keep the blunt truth inside the walls where it can be turned into drills and details. Outside, keep it standards, gratitude, and simple messages the room can echo. You do that for a month and the narratives exhaust themselves. People move on. Winning helps them sprint. Fans see more than you think. They can feel when a team is together by the way they celebrate a hockey assist, or how 5 heads snap back on defense the moment a shot goes up. They can tell when a star's body language says, we're in this, versus I'm above this. Chicago's fans are hungry. They've shown up in lean years. They'll rally behind anyone who gives them the 2 things they value most: effort and respect. Win or lose, if you guard those, they'll guard you back. One practical tweak that changes everything: pace with purpose. Too often teams confuse speed with hurry. Pace means get to your spots earlier so the reads are easier, not wilder. Imagine the same possession that produced a charge now producing a pocket pass, because the screener arrived a beat sooner and the corner lifted. That's one coaching point. That's 6 points a night. That's the difference between close loss and road win. And nothing settles a narrative storm like a road win. Another tweak? Define roles so clearly that no one needs to squint. Who talks in huddles? Who calls switches late clock? Who owns the late game ATOs? Sometimes conflict isn't about ego, it's about fog. Clear the fog and the noise drops 10 decibels. Stars thrive when the room knows who they are, what they bring, what they don't, and what everyone else must supply around them. And here's something old school that never stops working. Praise in public, correct in private. It's simple, it's timeless. It has survived every era of this sport. When leaders live by it, teammates stand taller. When leaders ignore it, even small teams feel heavy. The great ones learn the difference. The durable ones practice it. So what would a perfect first month of next season look like for Chicago if Reese stays? Fewer words, cleaner film. Single-digit turnovers in 3 of the first 5 games. One night where she controls the 4th with rebounding. A kick-out 3 and a wall-off box-out that no one but the staff will remember. A press conference with nothing but praise for a teammate who scored 6 points but defended like a drumline. One game where she walks away from a borderline whistle without a look back. That's it. Nothing viral, everything vital. And what would a perfect first month look like for Reese if she's wearing a different jersey? A coach who tells her, on day 1, we're gonna build your decisions like we build your core. A point guard who says, "If the dig comes, I'm your release." A big who chuckles, "You get it up there, I'll hammer it." And a radio call the first time she sprints past a guard for an and one. Suddenly the narrative changes. It always does when the ball goes through and the bench explodes. Either way, the next chapter isn't about slogans, it's about sequences. One footwork fix, one pass earlier, one less word at the wrong time. Stack enough of those and people start using the word that really matters in pro sports. Trust. Trust from the front office that you're worth building around. Trust from teammates that you'll lift them, not list them. Trust from fans that you're not just a headline, you're a heartbeat. And if that trust shows up, everything else gets easier. Recruiting veterans gets easier. Playing through whistles gets easier. Closing games gets easier. Even the microphones get easier. Because you're not talking to prove a point, you're talking to confirm one. That's how a season that felt chaotic becomes a foundation. That's how a loud year turns it into a loud building. So here's your final question of the night. Do you believe the apology turns into action? Or do you believe the front office turns the page? Drop your take below. If you're Team Clark, tell us which team first habit you want Chicago to copy tomorrow. If you're Team Reese, tell us the one on court tweak that flips her efficiency. And if you're just Team Basketball, tell us the first free agent archetype you'd sign to fix this roster balance. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because when the first domino falls this offseason, we're breaking it all down with receipts, film, and the kind of straight talk this channel lives on.